What's up everyone? Today we're going to be talking about the differences between the ever-growing downcountry bikes and comparing them to what is a modern trail bike. So let's get right into it and hopefully you enjoy the ride at the same time. So this category of bike, the downcountry bike, has definitely been growing very quickly over the past couple of years, and it is verging on a trail bike, but it's almost not there. Comparatively to a 10-year-old bike, it actually has many of the same features, but with a much more updated geometry. So let's go over a few things which make up the difference between a trail bike and a downcountry bike. So the biggest thing I find between these two categories of bike is weight. In general speaking, a trail bike is around 25 in the high end to 35 pounds in the kind of entry level setup. Now when I talk about trail bikes, I'm talking about a full suspension style of bike, not necessarily this newer category where there are some high-end hardtails also slipping into it. Some of those ones are similar weights but can be a little lighter. Compared to a downcountry bike, these things are running as low as 21, 22 pounds all the way up to maybe 34 on the heavy side. Generally though, they are significantly lighter, and there's a few different things which make them lighter. One being the amount of frame integrity and structure they built into it, two being suspension choices, and three being potential like brake and part spec choices otherwise outside that. The gearing between the two bikes is very similar, if not the exact same, and this is what puts them in the same category of bike. It's not like a downhill bike with just 7 gears on the back. Both options will have a 12-speed option. Obviously, in the very entry-level ones, that could be a 10-speed option still. It's going to have 1 gear on the front and 10 to 12 on the back. So, geometry-wise, there's some big changes. In a trail bike, you're going to look at a slacker front end, steeper seat post, as well as generally a much longer reach. Up to 40 mils, so that's a pretty drastic size change in some models. This is going to make them much better at downhill, be a lot more forgiving, will roll over things a lot smoother, just with that longer, slacker, stretched out feel to it. Downcountry bikes have definitely got slacker over the years, and that's where the down has come into them, but they're definitely not as slack or long. They're definitely more agile, and it'll allow for a lot better control through tight trails and climbing areas. Something like what we're doing now, you'd really be able to climb this at a high speed, whereas we get a bit of a wobble going on. Brakes are very similar between the two models. Most trail bikes now are leaning towards the 4-piston, even in some of the entry-level models, whereas in the entry-level models and some brands, you'll look at a 2-piston for the downcountry. 2-piston can be quite good stopping power, plus are significantly lighter weight, but those 4-piston brakes are on some downcountry bikes and on most trail bikes. This is just going to have the most amount of stopping force, so you'll be able to really go as fast as possible down these hills and still get a lot of braking power as well as less brake fade. Suspension is another huge difference between the two. Generally speaking, a trail bike now is 140 mils up to 160 mils of travel, which is quite drastically big compared to previous years. This is going to allow them to take large hits, have a lot better control on downhills with thicker stanchions, and just overall take more of a beating. The downside to that though is it is a heavier setup. Downcountry saves a lot of weight by going with thinner stanchions, going to 115 to 130 mils of travel front and rear, and it creates a lot lighter weight suspension, which can make a big difference on the overall bike weight. Still is able to handle some big hits now comparatively. 130 mil used to be the trail bike standard, but with newer geometries, you're able to get a lot out of that and still keep a lot more lightweight of a frame, bike, and overall whole package. Wheels, now there's a lot to talk about wheels, relatively a whole another video, but generally speaking, trail bikes, they vary. Most are 29 now, but as we've seen with some recent releases, 27.5 is still there. The Giant Trance and the Remedy are still sticking to straight 27.5. As well, now we're seeing more and more mixed bikes or mullet bikes come out, where you have a 29 on the front and a 27.5 on the back. All these count as trail bikes. It's a wide argument. You'll never find a correct answer on the internet of which is the best, which is fastest. They all have their benefits. When it comes to down country though, they're sticking to pretty much one size and one size only, and that is 29. 29 is definitely the fastest rolling. It will roll over things very smoothly. It will climb very efficiently. It's something people are kind of sticking to unless you have a small frame or extra small frame, and then it's just for fitting, obviously. If they can squeeze a 29 on there, they do, and that's a critical difference between it. There's less wheel choice in that downcountry world, but it is faster, especially if you're doing more gravel or longer distance rides. It's really going to make a huge difference going to a 27.5 compared to a 29, especially on that downcountry category. So that's why they stick with it. Overall, they're becoming very similar bikes. It's getting harder and harder to choose which is the best. It's kind of like the electric car thing where realistically, for the most part, a downcountry bike might be the one bike which covers 90% of your riding. Just like an electric car will cover 90% of what you do and has enough range for that, it's that small 10% which really puts us in question. What happens if I go to the mountains? What happens if I decide to go to a bike park? Is this going to be enough for me? Does the geometry adjust enough to do these kind of things? And overall, is the weight worth it? It's up to you, and hopefully you'll be able to ride a few bikes. Hopefully you'll be able to ride a few of these bikes. It's obviously hard to do now, but do what you can, see what you can test ride. A lot of bike shops are getting inventory. It is really hard to pick out the two. So hopefully this video helped you out. Like and subscribe if that's something you want to do. And otherwise comment below which is your favorite wheel size, because that should get some fun. Alright guys, thanks. Good luck.